One of the many mysteries of the political rise of Donald Trump is how he could be the darling when it comes to evangelicals. Now, there's no time to list all the things this man has said and done that directly contradict everything the faith-based leaders preach about every week. Well, a new book, it spends a lot of time talking about just that dichotomy and a lot more. It is called The Death of Politics: How to Heal Our Frayed Republic After Trump. The author, Peter Wehner, served in the Reagan and Bush 41 administration prior to becoming Deputy Director of Speechwriting for President George W. Bush. Andrew, he sat down with Wehner earlier today.
Peter, you spend much of your book discussing and analyzing the evangelical support for President Trump, a thrice married, twice divorced, multiple cheater presidential and candidate and politician who has been with porn stars, and of course, we know what he said on his Access Hollywood tape. They support him in higher numbers than they did George W. Bush, who was born again and talked about his faith all the time. Why?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it goes to a troubling moment in our political life, and I think it's an indictment against evangelicals. I think their argument is that Donald Trump is a champion of policies that they believe in. A lot of evangelicals are conservative theologically and conservative politically, and they made the determination that certainly in the election of 2016, between he and Hillary Clinton, that he would pursue policies on life, on courts, and the economy, and so forth, that they agree with and that they think will do more good for the nation. But I accept your point, and I'll make two additional points to it. The first is that there's the rank hypocrisy of evangelical Christians who during the 1990s and the Bill Clinton presidency argued day after day after day, hour after hour after hour, that character mattered, that morality mattered in our leaders. And they used morality and ethics as a 2x4 to hit Bill Clinton upside the head. And now when it comes to Donald Trump, who's a man of enormous personal and professional corruption, they go sotto voce. They go silent or they defend him.
Is Trump's support among evangelicals, does it extend to evangelical, what I'll call laymen, or is it primarily among evangelical leaders? And is it just do they recognize how transactional the nature of this relationship appears to be?
Yeah, those are great questions. It's certainly the case with some large part of the evangelical leadership, the people that I mentioned. In terms of the lay people, the people in the pews, it's a complicated issue. I know a lot of evangelical Christians who are supportive of Trump because of his policies, but they're generally troubled by his ethics, and they're uneasy in their support of him. I know others who are fervent and vociferous and enthusiastic supporters of Trump and simply won't hold him accountable and don't really see that what he's doing is problematic. And I think that is a blindness. It's an example of political tribalism, which I talk about in the book, confirmation bias, this notion that you go out in search of arguments and scriptural verses to support preordained, partisanly derived at decisions. Whether they understand that or not, I don't know. Of course, it's hard to know the human heart, or it's hard enough to know our own human heart, let alone others. The transactional nature of it, I think that they probably don't understand fully how transactional it is and how discrediting it is, not just to them as individuals, but, and here I speak as a person of the Christian faith, how I think discrediting it is to their Christian witness.
Trump is such an aberration, particularly on our moral norms that we expect for a president, and yet he's still got the support of the evangelical community. And so, I mean, he's such an outlier that somebody who has half as many moral and ethical issues as Trump does might actually be more viable of a candidate for that support from evangelicals. Is this the new normal for evangelicals, that we're willing to overlook a heck of a lot here in advance of our policies?
Well, I hope it's not, but for now it is. I don't think they'll overlook moral transgressions if it has to do with a liberal or a Democrat. I think what we've seen is that it's selective, that if it's their guy, the president of their party, the person who is advancing the issues that they want, they'll overlook the transgressions, the moral transgressions, and if it's people they disagree with, they'll make a big deal out of it. Tony Perkins, who's head of the Family Research Council, gave an interview a year or two ago, which was very revealing in two respects. One is he admitted that they would give Trump a mulligan, that they would overlook his moral and ethical transgressions because he was the leader of their team. The other thing that he said, which got less attention, but I think in some ways is a window into the mindset of many white evangelicals, is he said, we view Donald Trump as the guy on the playground who's going to punch the bully in the nose. And for them, and for Perkins, the bullies are liberals. I think he mentioned specifically in that interview Barack Obama and Eric Holder. And I think what a lot of evangelicals believe is that Donald Trump will figuratively bring a Glock to a knife fight, that he will go out and try and not just defeat liberals, but destroy them. And I can't underscore enough how much in my interactions with evangelicals, there is a sense that this is an existential struggle, that this is an apocalyptic moment. And they believe, I think they're very, very wrong, and it's led them to very, very dark places. But their belief is that if Democrats win, if liberals win, our country will come apart. We're on the edge of a cliff. That faith will be under attack. That Christian faith will be stripped from American life. That religious liberties will be taken, and this has created a lot of fear among a lot of evangelicals. And fear of that kind eventually is transmuted into anger and grievances and resentment. I had a conversation with a close friend of mine, someone I've known for many years, a couple of weeks ago, and there was a group of us, and one person who was not a particular Trump supporter, even though he's a lifelong conservative, asked me, what explains evangelical support for Donald Trump? Is it Roe v. Wade? And I said, that's some of it, but I thought that a lot more was going on, the thing that I just described. And I said, my feeling is that for a lot of evangelicals, they feel like Trump is willing to slit the throat of the left. And that was vivid language and intentionally so. But what was so interesting to me is that my friend said, while he disagreed with some of Trump's style because he thought it was counterproductive from a PR perspective, he said, I want to slit the throat of the left because that's what they want to do to me, and we have to do it to them first. And that was a remarkable admission, but it was a glimpse into that mindset. When you view this world as a conflict, as a culture war, as opposed to what the artist at Fuller Seminary, Maku Fujimura, calls culture care. If you view this as a culture war, then you're willing to make deals with the devil to defeat Satan. And I'm afraid that that's what a lot of evangelicals have done. And I think it's coming at a terrifically high cost to the evangelical witness, but also to our politics and to our country.
Well, I don't know how you make a deal with the devil to defeat Satan. And just looking at some of the language you just used in that answer, saying that Trump, they see him as somebody who'll punch liberals in the face or slit their throats, incredibly, pardon my saying, unchristian language and imagery. Look at the 7 deadly sins: lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, pride. Trump checks in on every single one of them. The 10 commandments, other than murder, which he's joked about, and arguably having no other God before the Lord, and I say arguably because who knows how he views himself, Trump breaks every single one of them. I mean, is it just lost on these people, or this is, and I know I'm repeating, but is this the deal that they've all agreed to?
Yeah, I think that they've engaged in what Bill Clinton supporters engaged in the 1990s, and the term that was used back then is compartmentalization. They say, okay, there's an area of the president's life, personal life, aspects even of his public life that are not pretty, that may be immoral, but he's doing good things for the country. The argument that was made for Clinton and is now being made for Trump is we elect a president, not a pastor. And I'll tell you something else that I've heard from a lot of friends of mine who are evangelical Christians and non-Christians, and it goes something like this. John McCain, Mitt Romney, George W. Bush were people of greater personal integrity, unquestionably, than Donald Trump. But they maybe were too genteel. They weren't mean enough. They weren't tough enough. They didn't understand the stakes of the struggle. And while Trump is rough around the edges, maybe he says things that we're not comfortable with. We wish he would have led his life in a different way. At least he's willing to fight them. He's aggressive. He never takes a step back. He hits back 10 times harder than he's hit. and he knows how to please people. And I think that that is a large part of what's going on. And I think that that has a kind of emotional and psychic resonance with a lot of evangelical Christians and non-evangelical Christians who are Trump supporters as well. And I think that that feeling that we're in this great human struggle and we have to win means that they're willing to accept a lot in Donald Trump and a lot of his flaws because they think that associated with those flaws come his strengths, and they think that his style of politics, what we've been talking about, the dehumanization, is part of that. So I think if you press them very hard, they wouldn't defend Trump's moral transgressions. They just wouldn't spend much time on it, and they would quickly, very quickly, change the subject and come back again and again and again to Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton or the left and what they're trying to do to them.
Peter Wehner is the author of The Death of Politics, How to Heal Our Frayed Republic. Peter, thanks for a few minutes. Appreciate it.
I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks.
Up next, we take a look at our visit to the U.S.-Mexico border and what we found.